Hello everyone, today we'll be looking at another topic which is concept of centers of origin, their importance with reference to Vavilov's work. So let's begin. Defining a center of origin for a crop, it can be defined as a geographical place where a crop is believed to have originated. A center of origin is a geographical area where a group of organisms, plant species, either domesticated or wild, first develop its distinctive properties. So in short, we can say a center of origin of a crop plant is a geographical place on the earth where it has originated for the first time. Center of origin were identified in 1924 by an agronomist botanist we call as Nikolai Vavilov. Ivanovich Vavilov was a prominent Russian and agronomist, botanist and genetist best known for having identified the centers of origin of cultivated plants. Another term is center of diversity, which is defined as a region of the world where greatest variability of a crop species is believed to have occurred. In short, we can define center of diversity as a place where the maximum variability is seen in a crop species that the geographical area can be labeled as the center of diversity for that very crop plant. But according to Vavilov, center of origin can also be considered for center of diversity because it's the center of origin of a crop species where we find the maximum diversity of that very particular crop plants. Vavilov's genius began with the concept of plant variability as described by Darwin and others. He took idea a step further and realized that our major food crops which were evolved over millennia must have originated from central point from which they have successfully dispersed. You see the rice which we eat today, it was not the same rice before million of years ago. There were the wild variety of the rice which is quite different from the present day rice. It means the rice has taken its journey from the wild ancestor to present day rice and tracing back its origin where its wild ancestor has for the first time grown, that place will be called the center of origin. Vavilov hypothesized that the centers of origin were likely where the genetic diversity of the crop species is highest. According to Vavilov, the center of origin of a particular crop species is likely the area where its genetic diversity is also highest. Vavilov began to look painstakingly for those centers through plant explorations and evaluation. Here you can see the picture of the Vavilov and his team carrying various expeditions across the globe to find the centers of origin, to gather the information to frame the centers of origin. While developing his theory on the centers of origin of cultivated plants, Vavilov organized a series of botanical agronomic expeditions and collected seeds from every corner of the globe, building one of the first and most comprehensive seed banks. What Vavilov and his team did, they visited various parts across the globe, especially the areas which were the sites of ancient agricultural civilizations. Therefore, the in ancient when where in past agricultural civilizations have taken place and of mountainous regions in particular which were interested to Vavilov. He organized his trips there and collected the seeds from all over these areas and was successful in building one of the first and most comprehensive seed banks. Then collected the information based on the archaeological data, genetics, and anatomical data for proposing his theory on origin of crop plants. He was of interest in the places where there were a lot of variation and the wild ancestors were also present. In 1926, Vavilov proposed and classified center of origin of crop plants as he defined two centers of origin. One he said was the primary center of origin. Crops evolved from wild ancestors in the area showing maximum diversity. That can be labeled as primary center of origin of a crop. Then he said there can be secondary center of origin also. It is the place, secondary center of origin is a place where the crop has not actually originated, but it shows considerable diversity of forms, although it didn't originate at that place, but there is maximum diversity. So that A geographical area where a plant has not originated but shows considerable diversity of forms, much variation, we can label that as secondary center of origin for that very particular crop. A Vavilon's center of diversity is region of the world first indicated by Nikolai Vavilov to be an original center for the domestication of plants. Nikolai Vavilov identified differing number of centers. From time to time, he began to give a different number of centers for the origin of crops. In 1924, he published 3 centers, then 1926 5, then in 1929 6, then 7 in 1931, and finally in 1935 he said there were 8 centers. He published his work on studies on the origin of cultivated plants, which described his theories on the origin of crops. Vavilov concluded that each crop has a characteristic primary center of diversity, which is also its center of origin. 8 areas were recognized and suggested as the centers from which all our major crops have originated and domesticated. Later, he modified his theory to include secondary centers of diversity for some crops. So let us see what are the 8 centers of origin proposed by Vavilov. Number 1 is Chinese center. Number 2 is Indian center. In Indian center, he said there is a sub-center which he called as Indo-Malayan center. Then there is Inner Asiatic center. Number 4th is Asia Minor, then the Mediterranean Center, then Abyssinian Center, which we call as Ethiopian Center now, the South Mexican and Central American Center, then we have South American Andes region, and then we have the Chilean Center, and then Brazilian Paraguayan Center. This is a world map. You can see the various centers here. Number 1 is Chinese center here. Number 2 is Indian center. And then its sub-center is Indo-Malayan center. Number 3 is Inner Asiatic center. Number 4 is here Asia Minor. Number 5 is here Mediterranean center. 6th is Ethiopian center or Abyssinian center. Then we have the 7th center, the South Mexican and Central American center. Then we have 8th center, which is South American center. And it has 2 sub-centers. One is the Chilean center and another is Brazilian Paraguayan center. Now let's look at these centers one by one. First one is Chinese center, which is present in China. Vavilov said a total of 138 species have originated from this center. It is the largest center. Then the Indian center. It includes the entire Indian subcontinent and has a total of 117 species, plant species ascribed to it. Then we have the Indo-Malayan center, which is sub-center of it, includes Indonesia, Philippines, etc., having 55 plant species. Then we have the Inner Asiatic center, which includes Northwest India, Punjab, Northwest frontier provinces, Kashmir, Afghanistan, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Western Tansha. Some 42 species are believed to have originated from this place. Then we have the Asia Minor. It includes interior of Asia Minor and Iran and the highlands of Turkmenistan. Some 83 species are believed to have originated from here. Then the Mediterranean center, it includes the borders of the Mediterranean Sea. It's present in Europe. Some 84 species are believed to have originated from this center. Then we have Abyssinian center, which includes Ethiopia, Eritrea, and parts of Somalia. 38 species. Then we have South Mexican Central American Center. It includes the sections of Mexico, Guatemala, Honduras, Costa Rica, and some 45 species. Then we have South American Andes region, which includes Peru, Extra, Bolivia. 45 species have originated from here. Then we have Chilean center. It's in the island near the coast of southern Chile. Only 4 species here. Then we have the Brazilian Paraguayan center. Only 13 species have originated here. Now the major food crops which have originated in these crop plants, it's a list provided by the Vavilov. You can see that from the wiki page of centers of origin. Now coming to importance of origin of centers. It helps identifying and locating the origin of crop plants is basic to plant breeding. This allows one to locate wilder relatives, related species, and new genes, especially dominant genes, which may provide resistance to diseases. It's like we can find the good genes from its wilder relatives or related species and that can help us to modify a certain crop plant. Knowledge of the origin of crop plants is important in order to avoid genetic erosion. See, if a crop plant has certain genes, we can get a germplasm of it. If we get its wilder relatives, its allied relatives. The loss of germplasm due to loss of ecotypes and land races have taken place. Loss of habitat and increased urbanization have also caused the genetic erosion, but we can restore this gene bank of a particular species by finding its wilder relatives and its related species. Germplasm preservation is accomplished through gene banks, largely seed collection, as was done by Vavilov, but now frozen stem sections are also taken. And weekend preservation of the natural habitats is also done, especially in the centers of the origin. But there's a painful end to this Vavilov's work. Vavilov's work was criticized by Tronfel Lysenko. He was at that time also a genetist who was opposing the Mendelian concepts, but he won the favor from Joseph Stalin. Joseph Stalin was a ruler of at that time of the Soviet Union, and Trofim Lysenko gained his favor, and as a matter of fact, Vavilov was arrested for his work and subsequently sentenced to death in 1941. After his sentences, but his punishment was reduced to 20 years, but he died in the prison in 1943. But after his death, his reputation was publicly rehabilitated and he began to be hailed as a hero of the Soviet science. This is all about the center of origin. Thank you.